Oh my God, Patrick, here we are again. How are you?
I'm doing great.
I'm glad to hear that.
That
Today
is,
we're going to talk. What's that?
I was going to say, that's literally the same thing I say every single time.
I know. Maybe you should change it up sometime. I'm going to buy you. What's that? What's the word? Whenever a word for another word.
Uh, Synonym?
Thesaurus. I need.
Thesaurus.
Well, that's not the word, but I'm going to buy you a thesaurus.
Okay.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Clean Break, a podcast dealing with art and business powered by Always Art. I'm your host, Matt Gondek. Patrick, you know how sometimes an artist decides to work with a gallery or an agent, and the gallery or agent will want them to sign a contract where they want the artist to be exclusive to them? Do you know about that?
I do know about that, and
Love
I
your
think you
energy
know
so
that
far.
no, well, it's because I'm just thinking about it. I think you know my stance on this. I don't think it's a good idea for an emerging artist, but we'll get into that.
All right, man, I really have other opinions. For everyone listening, today's episode is about exclusivity in the art world. Like I said, it's, you work with a company on a big project, or you work with a gallery or whatever, an agent, and they want you to only work with them. So we're going to kind of cover some pros and some cons about that, what that means for your career, all that stuff. uh it's kind of like being in a relationship, like your significant other only wants you to be with them. They don't want you to go out sleeping around. Don't go out for burgers when you have steak at home, Pat. Anyway, we have a bulleted list. We're going to go through and start talking about this stuff. The first things first is exclusivity, right, for you. So what do you think, Patrick? Like, I know how you feel, but we gotta play both sides of the
Yeah,
fence
no,
here.
it's fine.
Yeah.
I I think exclusivity is good at certain stages of your career. But
Hmm.
for me, thinking about the audience we're probably talking to, I think exclusivity early, if it's a long term exclusivity, is a mistake. Now, exclusivity for a show or 6 month window, that's fine
Yeah, agreed.
because it keeps you focused and it keeps everybody honest. But if somebody's approaching you because you had one bang out show, two bang out shows, and they're trying to lock you down for 3 years and worldwide or in the US,
Don't do it.
I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, agreed. There are benefits also. These are pluses. Obviously there's minuses, but some of the pluses, like it's a more guaranteed stream of income. If you're only dealing with one gallery, you know where the money's coming from. They are going to be trying to promote you and market you. If you work with somebody. There's also something I learned when I was exclusive to one gallery, where you kind of get into this routine, which to some people they quite like. And what I mean by that is, I know that I have a show with the gallery I always work with. So I know exactly who I have to email when it's time to send them photos of the paintings. And I know exactly how to get the paintings to them and what address, because I've done it before. And I know when I'm going to get paid because they've already paid me in the past. Like, you get in these routines, which are nice, because when you're always jumping around looking to work with different people every time, you have to have a lot of the same conversations, and it does eat into your time for creating. And then obviously problems arise because you're always dealing with different people. You lose sight of, I forgot to send this person an invoice. I forgot to send photos to this gallery. So, like, those kind of things arise too. There are downsides, which you kind of covered there, Patrick, a little bit. Let's talk about them some more.
Yeah, well, on the upside of it, that to me the biggest upside, which you didn't even mention, is that you probably had predictability on when your shows were. So you
Yeah,
knew you were doing one show every 6 months, let's say, in two parts of the country, or one in the US, one in a different part of the world. But you were kind of in a special case. Your career grew faster than the average person. Um, but I'm thinking most of our listeners, won't have that trajectory. So I would think that it would take them a while to get to where you were. And my advice on exclusivity in that instance is, it's your dating scenario where you date a couple people before you find out who you want to be exclusive with.
totally. Oh yeah, you don't
And
want to go out right out the gate and like get locked down. Totally.
yeah, but I think a lot of early artists do. If I go back to and listen to a bunch of your past episodes. I think a lot of the artists had done that.
Well, Patrick, and I mean, I'm saying this because like, and respectfully, you were never an artist. You did other things, but like I speak from experience where I was just getting by barely for so long that when someone came to me and offered me an olive branch and a chance to make more money and have my work shown in other countries, it's really hard to turn that down. You're right. My career
I
grew really fast, and like when first started working with my old gallery, like there was a tipping point where I went from basically almost nothing to everything really quickly, and that was really hard to turn down. But with that came a very long, extended exclusivity
Yeah,
contract, more so.
and again, yes, I'm not an artist, but I know the business side of things,
Of
and that's
course,
where the gallery is. And my take on it is, if you're going to go exclusive, and I'm not saying don't, you have to know what you're getting into. You should read that document we have on the statement of understanding and ask all the questions that will pertain to you, not on the one or two shows, but 3, 4, 5 years down the road.
totally.
If you're doing a long-term exclusivity thing, you've got to make sure that there is provisions in there to revisit the commission structure, revisit what they comp to you, revisit, the kind of the balance of the relationship. Because if you jump into that exclusivity too early, um, you might be locking yourself or preventing yourself from some of that growth. I would also put in there, that it's truly a partnership, that you guys are sharing the data, that that you're working together, because a lot of that stuff, early artists don't realize until it becomes a pain point.
Yeah, I want to just touch on something you said, just to bring this back out. You mentioned about the statement of understanding, and guys, this isn't an ad. Like we're not selling it; it's free. Like on our website, we have this thing under it's under the tips. It's called statement of understanding. I never understood why it's called that, but it doesn't matter. It's just a list of things that you should ask a gallery or a dealer or agent or whoever before you work with them. Like, when do I get paid? Are you gonna pay for me to come to the show? What happens if you don't sell the work? It's just a giant list of things that you should ask a gallery or whoever before you sign a deal with them, which does lead it into our next bullet, the topic, which we already kind of started, which was read the agreement and
Yeah,
make sure you completely understand that.
yeah. Do you just see what you just said? So you understand that. That's why we titled it Statement
Oh
of
God, that's why
Understanding.
it's called that. Oh my
Yeah.
God, that's so dumb, but you're right. Maybe I need a dictionary. I
So,
don't know what I
but
need.
let me back up, because this is
Go ahead.
one plug for the podcast, which is, this is a document that I, it's one of the first things that I had thought of when I had thought of the business that we haven't even talked about. Um, but the reason I created it and called it the Statement of Understanding is, I had, early on when I was deep into my collecting and I was listening to a lot of your podcasts, even as a collector, not as an artist, I had gone through them so fast that I'd seen two things. I'd seen a transition in the way the collectors responded to the podcast. So not the collectors, the artists. So early on, they were like giving you advice, and then it quickly transitioned to where they were almost looking up to you. And in
They were
that,
wrong.
you always used to ask questions. Was that?
I just said they were wrong to do that. Look up to me. I'm just making a
Oh,
joke.
yeah.
Continue. Sorry.
So no. Um, so and you used to ask a lot of questions about what they had learned or what their advice would be. And what I noticed is that each one talked about a different pain point that they learned at a different time. And it always had to do with the misunderstanding, whether it's, when do I get the works back? Are they shipping the works? What the terms were they going to put me up? And I was just sitting there one day going, God, somebody should just put all these in one place.
Yeah.
So I literally went back and re-listened to every episode, wrote down things, and then when it related to putting on a show, I documented it.
Yeah.
And then
Hold
the
on real
reason I
quick.
call,
Sorry. I want
yeah,
to interject here. And I maybe the reason why so many young and like aspiring artists they don't ask those things because they're afraid to. Like it's almost like, again, going back to like someone's offering you this olive branch, you don't want to ask too many questions or be too demanding. I can do quotes now because we're video. Because you're afraid you're going to rock the boat or they're going to be turned off by you being too aggressive because you're afraid in the beginning, like, oh God, please, please help me. I don't have anything. But I've learned that it's better to ask because right off the bat, if you don't ask these things, if the gallery's been around for a while, not saying they'll think this, but like you're easier to take advantage of, right? It's just better
Yeah,
to
and
ask so like they know, oh oh shit, this artist knows what they're doing. They know what they're talking about. They're gonna respect you a little bit more and like give you more.
yeah,
Sorry.
well, though no, I totally agree, and the reason I look at it and why we title it Statement of Understanding is you need to understand these things. This is your career, this is your business,
Yeah.
and, uh, the reason I made it not a contract and more of a conversation is then they shouldn't get mad at you for asking these questions. It is a business relationship, like you said. These are very fair questions to ask. If you look at it, it's very balanced because it even goes very favorable in the gallery side when you're early because there's a lot of things you shouldn't expect early
Yeah.
in your career.
Yeah.
So, long story short, it's just a very good set of questions to frame the relationship and let you know if you want to go to exclusive. And if you've answered all of these and you're comfortable with the answers, then there is no problem going exclusive.
Yeah, totally. Let's move forward on the bulleted
Sure.
list here in terms of, if you decide to be exclusive with somebody. And I've done this in the past myself, if we're just going to say gallery, but again, a gallery is a placeholder for a company or a dealer or an agent, whatever. If a gallery reaches out and asks you to work with them, be exclusive, what I would do is I would go find out what other artists they represent or who else they show with. And then I would reach out to those artists and say, hey, and I'm always very respectful. And like sometimes they don't answer, and that's okay. But like, I'm so sorry to bother you. My name's Matt. I'm an artist. I was approached by what's this call them? Fern Gallery. I just made that up. Fern Gallery wants to work with me, be exclusive. I see you work with them. Do you have any thoughts or like how's your experience? Because I've learned most of the time, artists we kind of like help each other and look out for each other. And most of the time when I ask these questions, other artists they want to tell me, they want to be honest, like, oh, this gallery is really good. Like it doesn't hurt to ask and just get opinions from other artists. I think
Totally. And go broad. I wouldn't just do one artist. I wouldn't do their top artist. I wouldn't do, their bottom artist. I'd try to get a variety because different people have different working relationships. And
totally,
the other thing that I'll give a positive for a lot of galleries. I think a lot of galleries are changing pretty quickly right now. Just because I've been talking to a lot of galleries, and a lot of what we're talking about here, they're starting to do and starting to see as well that it needs to shift back to very heavy, relationship based and lifting.
needs to shift back to what?
Being kind of almost like a service to the artists
Oh,
and
got it.
working very collaboratively.
Yeah, it
Um,
needs to be a collaboration.
yeah, absolutely.
It's so hard. In the beginning when you're finally making money and like you don't realize that like the gallery is keeping every sale they make, they're keeping all that data away from you and they're hiding you in a corner so like no one knows can contact you. It's crazy. I'm glad to hear that's changing now. I mean, it needs to change. I mean, that's kind of one of the reasons we do this podcast, right?
Yeah, and I've been very pleasantly surprised with some of the galleries I've talked to and how I see that they see that the world shifted and they're trying to find ways to bring new value for
Totally, totally.
pieces that were lost.
That all being said, everyone, let's talk about the next bullet point. So they want to be exclusive. You read and understand the contract. You ask them some questions from the statement of understanding. You know what you're getting yourself into. Negotiate the terms. They want you to sign a deal for a year. You think it's good to work with them. It's beneficial, but you don't think it's good to sign a year. Push back 6 months. See what they say. Like it's not a problem to negotiate. Like that's how business is done. They offer a price, you counter with another price. Negotiation.
Yeah,
I know from experience, guys. I hate whenever like I get a DM or something like, "Oh, you were born rich," or like, "I was a I'm from nowhere. I didn't know any of this shit. I learned all this stuff. Like I was so afraid to do the stuff I'm saying. So like, but I learned it over time, and I wish I would have known this stuff. Like negotiate. Like you don't have to accept the first offer they give you. Like you can talk to them and work things out, and like so it's more mutually acceptable.
Yeah, and let's talk about these terms because I didn't think about this when I first saw the outline, and I know this is not covered in the statement of understanding. But if you're going for a year-long, exclusivity period, my guess is they're gonna want more than a year, but if you do a year, make sure that you have at least 1 or 2 shows in that time frame. You have a couple print drops in that time frame, because what you don't wanna do is agree to an exclusivity period, but you don't have any plan for revenue generating milestones in that time frame.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a because I feel like a gallery, they'll come at you in January, say we want to have a show with you in March. We want you to sign exclusivity for a year. You have the show in March, whether or not the work sells. What are you doing the next 9 months? Like you're right, plan out other things with them, or don't agree to it. That's a really good point, Patrick.
Yeah, and it to be honest, I probably should go update the statement of understanding to talk about that type of stuff.
Well, you can. We have access to the website. It is our
Yeah,
website.
thanks.
Yeah, I mean, that's this is a pretty quick episode. I know there's not much more to say, but like I think the last thing on the list we have written down, just keep your options open. Like what I mean by that is even if you do agree to work with a gallery exclusive, you should still be updating your social media and still trying to network and go out to other galleries shows and just be present, because the one thing you don't want to do, which I did for a while, was I put all my eggs in one basket. And when that basket tips over, where are you putting your eggs? Like I'm not saying like go out and make shady behind the back deals. Do not do that. But like if things go bad, other people are only a phone call or DM away because you've nurtured relationships with them. You've been working on your social media. You have nurtured your collector and your fan base. Like these are things you should be doing. Keep those options open.
Yeah, and another thing you could do, and goes back to the negotiating part of things, is even if you're exclusive for a year, you could put opt out clause in for with a 30-day notice, or you could say, hey, it's completely exclusive except for commissions,
Yeah.
something like that. Or another thing to do, and I think this is the second time recording this because we lost the audio the first time, I think, but we had mentioned last time that it doesn't hurt to agree to be exclusive in principle, but do 1 or 2 outside of the exclusivity and prove that you have a good working relationship and that you can do it without being exclusive. It's almost like when you're dating, right? Before you decide your boyfriend, girlfriend, or you're serious, you go through it together and you prove to each other that you're ready to take that step. It's not like the
Oh,
first date, you're
yeah.
like, right? But the art world doesn't work that way in a lot of times.
Well, sometimes it does. Like, I think the way that works in the art world is if a gallery would offer you to put a piece or two in a group show. That is kind of like the flirting stage. Like, would we be a good fit together? And I think you're right. Like, I do this to this day. Like, before I go exclusive with anybody, I kind of, I flirt a little bit like, okay, you can buy 2 paintings and what are you going to do with them? Because like, even to this day, I will do that and I'll find that once, okay, they bought the painting, that's great. It was a very good transaction, but I don't like how they market me. Maybe I don't like how they talk about my work to collectors. Like it doesn't fit into like what I'm doing. So like, there's just so many things that I don't even know what else to say about it. Like, I do think you're right. Just do a
Yeah,
little bit at first, try it out.
and that and the reason I would go a little further than a group show is there's a big difference between the way they market a group show and they market a solo show,
Yeah.
and the results of a solo show versus a group show. So ideally, if you could, don't do it like antagonistically or aggressively, but just say, hey, let's get through this one first, see how it goes. If it goes great, because think of it this way, they need to earn your trust and your respect as much as you need to earn theirs. And it doesn't hurt for both of you to put your best foot forward and prove to one another that you're worthy of that next level.
Yeah, agreed. I think, going back a little bit to where we were talking about negotiating, like if they want to do a year, going off what you said, Patrick, you could say, okay, we will do a show and maybe you offer them exclusivity for 3 months because, I don't want to come out and sound like I'm just like bashing galleries either. But like, I do think it's fair to give them some time because at the end of the day, if they're promoting you and pouring all their marketing into you because they have your work for a show, you're gonna get a little hot from that. Their fear is then you're gonna turn around tomorrow after the opening of the show and give someone else a bunch of work. So like that's I think like you said, we recorded the story. I think that's where we butted heads last time. Because I do think offering a shorter amount of exclusivity during a show is
Yeah,
okay.
I agree with that part of it. If
Okay.
they're giving you a show and they're marketing you, they deserve time before the show as they're doing the lead up, and probably they deserve 2 to 3 months after the show, including you dropping a print drop.
Yeah. Yeah. You should definitely do a print drop during a show always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, right after, but it still is probably bundled in under the exclusivity because they have put a lot of investment in you, so they do deserve that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
that type of exclusivity, I completely agree with. It's like a time window.
Yeah. Totally. Pat, I think that's it. There's really nothing else to say about this.
Yeah, no, I think we covered a lot in a short amount of
Amazing. Well, everybody, I
time.
hope I hope it's been a magical time. Thank you for 20 exclusive minutes of yours. Appreciate it. Pat, I guess that's it. I guess I'll talk to you later.
Sounds good.
All right, crash next time. Bye.
See ya.
All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. Maybe you have questions or opinions about what we talked about on this episode. Maybe you have your own questions about your art career or just looking for some advice. Shoot us an email and we'll answer your questions on a future episode. You can email us directly on our website, cleanbreakpodcast.com. And just a reminder that all our past episodes are available there, as well as a ton of free resources, guides, and tips on how to make more money with your art and get more people interested. This podcast is produced by Elijah Walsh, theme song by Ditch David, additional research by Ikram Dadar. I want to thank Patrick, Jason, and the Always Art team. My name is Matt Gondek. I'll crash you next time.